I'm not sure this has ever happened before that I was gutted by a loss at full time, but after a second watch, I was just short of actually being kind of happy. That probably needs some explaining. Anyway, it's time to start harping on rugby. Hello, my name is Jeff Pagano, and welcome to Harpin On Rugby, where, with the help of some fellow fans, I get the chance to harp on what's going on with Leinster, Ireland, and the wider rugby world. First up, joining me this week is someone making Harpin Pod appearance number 68, which means I'll have to avoid the obvious schoolboy humor for his next one. Welcome back to Mr. Tom Coleman.
Thanks, Jeff. I'll just skip to the 70th. I'll come on as a late sub for the next one, I
Yeah,
think.
there you go. And also with us is someone earning cap number 44, coming to us from the Great Rock of Gibraltar. Hello once again to Mr. Rich Massoud.
Hi, Jeff. Hi, Tom, from a very wet Gibraltar, but never mind.
Oh, me heart bleeds after all the pictures you'd be sending us of the sunny the sunny climbs. You know, a bit of rain won't hurt you at all.
We've had 3 weeks of Galway weather, so
Yeah, there you go.
There's a direct correlation between the bad weather in Ireland and how many pictures Rich posts in WhatsApp about good
Pretty
weather.
much. They could be responsible for it, actually. Okay, listen, let's crack on with our feature match of the week, which was, of course, the Vodacom Bulls v Leinster in round 13 of the 24-25 BKT United Rugby Championship. It was played at Loftus Versfeld on Saturday, March 22nd, and there were thunderstorms threatened to go along with the temperatures in the high 20s as Ross Byrne got proceedings underway, Tom.
Yeah, back down in Pretoria, was 280 days, I think we worked out, since we lost
Sure, who's
last
counting?
game. Yeah, I wasn't counting. Yeah, since we lost last the game, and it was down in the same ground. Yeah, look, crowd is a little bit smaller than I thought it might be. But look, we got the game underway pretty quickly, and we had a good tempo to the game initially. Look, all coaches do video reviews no matter what level, and I'm sure we'll focus on at the scrum at the end for why or why not we lost the game. But there's a few killers, coach killers in rugby, and some of them is just as simple as an easy offside penalty. And we gifted one to the Bulls in the first few minutes of the game, and sometimes you write those off and you go, but they all add up. It's 3 points, very soft penalty to give away. Will Connors was pinged for being offside, and rightly so. There was one later on in the second half, I'm sure Rich will touch on, that was ridiculous call, or it was actually end of my half, actually. But look, it was an easy three for the Bulls to get the scoreboard running, and a very avoidable penalty. There was a little bit of kick tennis for a few seconds, and it was good clearance by Jimmy O'Brien, who thought I had a good game running back from fullback. It was noticeable that we adjusted our style of play from the semi-final, where we got caught out badly by Willie LaRue. We weren't kicking in the same areas, and I think we learned our lesson from that, even though we came on the wrong side of the result. I thought Jimmy O'Brien's kicking was quite clever. He was going to the touch lines and going to the side, sometimes dropping them short, sometimes going long. And there was a bit of variance where we were too predictable last June. I'm trying to remember, was it last June? Where Willie LaRue sort of ran the show. But anyway, yeah, Jimmy had its first decent kick. It was a kickback by the Stormers, or the Bulls 10, Keegan Johannes. Poor enough kick, he didn't have a great game, I thought. It came to Tommy O'Brien. Tommy O'Brien went to regather his own kick, and again, poor by Keegan Johannes. He sort of was coming for the ball and then sort of stopped with about 3 seconds to go or 2 seconds to go and didn't go for it. And O'Brien was able to latch a boot onto it and got a kick through on it. And it was reminiscent of, I think it was Brian O'Driscoll against Jeremy Staunton way, way back in the day against Wasps. I didn't even bother looking up the year because I feel old enough already. But anyone that's on listen to the pod, if you Google Brian O'Driscoll v Wasps and that try that he got against Jeremy Staunton, and it's worth watching. But Tommy did really well to regather it, and it's funny when he regathered the ball, he was able to put on an injection of pace. But I think it was the lock, the second row, that got a sort of last ditch tackle on him, and he nearly got in. We went to phase right, then to Deegan. Not sure why. I'd questioned some of our options. I know we ultimately got a try off this move, but it was 4-against-1 on that side. So just a little bit of heads-up rugby. I thought at times during the whole match we weren't great at, because Deegan could have easily got bundled out of touch there. He did really well to stay in touch, but for me it was the wrong option. Now, in some ways, I'm going to contradict myself by saying the Bulls ended up very narrow off that, because I think there was only one Bulls defender outside the right-hand post as you were looking at the screen. So the Bulls were very narrow in it. It just took a series of good passes from McKee initially off the back of that ruck to Ross Byrne, out to Jimmy O'Brien, and Jordy Barrett just sort of sauntered in a big wide open gap, way bigger than you should be giving him, to make it 5-0, and it was a good try. All just generated by Tommy O'Brien, and it was a good start to the game. Other than that, so we came across the first sort of HIA the game quickly after that. It was James Culhane. And again, in review of the game, the HIAs we got in the first half really told in the second half. They were so early. Culhane, just before he got the HIA, he took a big carry in just before that, and did really well. As an aside, I'd love to know why from Leinster we always go to our number 8 from kicks. Like, I don't want to say we're predictable when you have somebody like Caelan Doris. This is nothing to do with poor Culhane's head injury or nothing. It's just an observation how predictable we are off receiving kicks out. Because I went to Culhane twice within 60 seconds. And the second time, good low tackle in, and just on his way down, his head caught the knee of the Bulls player. Very unlucky. Not a good sight. A few seconds afterwards, him trying to get back onto his feet, and it was quite visible that was his game done, and rightly so. But it was a little bit of a rejig in the back line. Soroka came on and Deegan switched to 8. But it was just unlucky. It was unlucky to get that head injury for him, and he's had a couple of knocks. Off the back of that, the Bulls sort of got their first sortie into our area of the pitch. Creel made a nice break. He sort of beat the shooter outside the fence and got wide out to Leclerc, and he tried a sort of Tommy O'Brien kick through, but he knocked on his own kick. Leclerc actually was an impressive player, I thought, for the Bulls. Huge amount of pace, nippy little player. Bulls didn't get it to him enough, I thought, throughout the day, if they were looking back on the game, because anytime he got the ball, he made some good line breaks or made some good runs, and he was a handful all day, but just didn't get enough ball from me. I thought overall the Bulls are poor attack wise, and they did look like a team that's only won 3 games out of the last 9. Obviously they won this one, but they're not in that great a form, and there was enough, even though they won the game, and Leinster will be disappointed by the end result. There was signs enough like why they've only won 3 out of the last 9 and why they've got knocked out of the Heineken Cup. For me, their attack didn't really function at all. And they didn't. Players like Leclerc and Creel, they didn't get the ball enough to. They were quite happy to kick against us a lot of the time, and thinking it may have worked well. But I think Leinster were a lot more clued in this time on the kicking game. Very quickly after that, we had our second HUA of the game. Deegan, he was sort of coming across from a bad angle to make a tackle, got his head completely on the wrong side. Just a poor technique for anyone that's not how to tackle in rugby. It's very easy for me to sit here on the chair and criticise Deegan going up against a big bull down in Pretoria on tackling, but he just got his head completely on the wrong side, and he was gone for the game. So that was 2 back rows gone already. So whilst the effects of it didn't show in the first half, it's those substitutions told in the last sort of 20 minutes for me when you're playing at altitude and you have to use the full 23 available. Losing those 2 lads early was a real killer blow. We got pinged shortly after that. Penny, hands beyond the ruck. It was something Whitehouse was hot on all day. As I said earlier, one of the calls against Will Connors I thought was ridiculous on it. Even the Penny one was, just about, but it wasn't so clear. But he seemed to be hot on it all day, and I suppose you've got to play the referee. So off the back of that penalty Penny gave away, Bulls went to line out, but gave away a silly penalty by sort of putting a player in between the catcher and any potential counter maul that Leinster were going to try. And it was, again, I spoke about at the start of the game, Leinster giving away silly penalties. That was a real silly penalty by the Bulls to give away. And then we had a moment in this halfway through the first half where the Bulls did get a yellow card. Ross had gathered a kick through from the Bulls, and there was a nice offload to, RG Snyman, made one of his trademark offloads. And it was to Will Connors. And the Bulls guy came in, and for me, he was, he was off his feet and no control. They're the main two factors for me when you're looking at whether people would say this was a harsh yellow card. But when you're going off your feet, in the same way as you could probably say Max Deegan, to a certain degree, he went off his feet and he had very little control. But his was more bad technique than anything else. The Bulls guy had Will Connors square on, and there was no wrap, and he was off his feet and no control. And people might complain saying it was a harsh yellow card, but I think they're the type of tackles we want to rid out of the game. It was an issue in American football for a long time about tackles like that, doing knees and doing ligaments. So I have no real complaints about it. It'd be interesting to see if any Bulls listeners would have a different opinion. But look, it is what it is. From that resulting penalty on the yellow card, we had some lovely interplay, and it resulted in the Bulls being offside. Looking back at this, one criticism I'd have of Leinster would be Luke kept going to the blind side too often. It seems to be his go-to thing when he gets to the back of the ruck. And again, not criticizing Luke, but I think Luke's had a big improvement this season, and he's responded to the change in tactics by Leinster, and I think he's doing really well. But I felt in this game, whether it was Leinster's attacking shape or him or a bit of combination of both, he kept going to the blind for me too often. And after a while, it became easily read. Even on those phases of play, Creel was able to shoot out and shut down one attack quite easily. And then it ended up with Willie Leroux nearly intercepting out wide. Now, I know we had penalty advantage as well, but in coaching rugby, you have players like people you call 11 or 21 or 31, which is basically you're going one phase to the open and then one to the blind is 11, or two phases to the open and one to the blind is a 21, or three phases to the open and one to the blind. We kept going blind a lot of the time, and it doesn't move defenses around as much. And I think we were doing it so often, it became a bit easily read, and it didn't give actually Ross Byrne much room. There was plenty of times where Ross Byrne was smothered by Bulls players. So whether it was just a complete new personnel or not, but you have two very experienced halfbacks. I would have thought, given the forward momentum we had in that first half, that and the go forward ball at a lot of times, that a little bit more variance on it. Maybe it's harsh on Luke because we're used to looking at Gibson Park a lot, and he's always scanning. And but I suppose I'd be disappointed maybe with Leinster not having that variance of, as I call it, a 21 or a 31. And to me, that's not necessarily all down to Luke. I'm sort of letting him off the hook. We going to blind too often. Might have been just a tactic before the game. But I thought we didn't adapt to it quick enough. Because the Bulls did shut it down a few times. So yeah, we ended up getting an easy enough 3 off the back of that, even though we had advantage. But just some concerns about our attacking shape. From the Bulls restart, Geordie on his few weeks off, I don't know whether he was playing tennis, because I know he was playing golf, but he seemed to know his tram lines pretty well, because this kick was going over his head, and the last second he let it go, and at best it looked 50-50, but he definitely knew his tram lines, and as I said, he must have been playing tennis, because he went out in the fall and it came back for a scrum to us. So that was a poor error by the Bulls. Off the back, we got a scrum penalty off the scrum restart from that. I thought we didn't get to join the first half from our scrummaging that we deserved. Obviously, the scrum at the end ultimately told the game, and it's a lot of things people remember. But I thought Slimani especially didn't get the reward. He seemed to play advantage on our scrum, even though he did, as in he let the ball go, rather than what I feel as in give the penalty and then let the ball go. There was several times in that first half where the Bulls' loose head was collapsing in. So yeah, it was unfortunate that we didn't get sort of advantage to be able to play off that. Um, Off that scrum penalty, we had a line out, and it was we lost two line outs all day. I think we went 12 from 14. Two of the ones we lost was in the first half, and this was one of them. We just didn't do a good restart. We had HIA number 3 in this period of time. Ross Byrne came off, probably a bit bemused looking. It definitely wasn't as clear as Culhan and Deegan's. And he was shaking his head coming off the pitch. I presume
They
it was.
hate those mouth guards. They hate them, I'd say.
Yeah. I think it was a mouthguard sensor that went off because he was frustrated coming off. And Frawley came on. Kieran, I know I'm biased, some Scaries man, but he didn't have his best cameo when he came on. He gave away a ruck penalty. Just a silly ruck penalty right in front of the ref. We spoke about silly penalties all day. And even though he was told, and I know there was another issue where he gave a second penalty away from slightly unlucky, slight mistiming where he kicked a short little kick through when he caught a guy in the air. And I know he dropped the ball as well, I think, in the second half at some stage. So he's definitely a guy just seems to be low in confidence. But look, he's in the right place. I think, Leinster aren't going to throw him on the scrap heap. He's too good a player for that. But I think Cullen needs to do what he needs to do to get him back. He hasn't been his best. Cullen hasn't done him a whole lot of favors over the years, moving around and not playing him in certain positions. So I don't, it just seems to be that seems to have come to a head with the two of them, as in, Cullen needs to put an arm around him or whatever needs to be done here to just because he's definitely one that's going to be needed with Ross going and we're not to Gloucester, and we're not sure about Harry Byrne's future. Yet, we definitely need Kieran Frawley. Just to finish off the half of the few other issues, I counted from the 25th to the 27th minute, just a little over 2 minutes, the Bulls gave away 5 penalties in a row. And look back in the game, that's quite frustrating. The referee didn't even warn them. There was a neck roll by Forster that, in fairness, was caught by the TMO, I think. That gave us a line out into Bulls territory. And there was a series of 4 penalties there. The first one was obviously jumping across the line out. Hanekom was then pinged for pushing Luke McGrath late, just a blatant push. There was another offside penalty. And then again, there was another Bulls player took the 9 off the back of the ruck. So it was like 5 penalties in just about 2 minutes, with no chat from the referee. And a lot of them 4 of those was inside the 22. Andrew Osborne went off for a HIA as well. I'm not sure, looking back, what happened there. I don't know if any spotted what the case may be with that. But off the 5th penalty of those, whatever reason, he went back to the Hanekom one out of the 4 for the push. Leinster went to the lineout. I said there was a 5th penalty off the lineout for taking the 9. This time Leinster decided to tap. McKee took a nice tap penalty, and we went blind. Penny made a lovely line. Penny's always quite good at these tap penalties. He seems to be, over the years, he's been the architect of a lot of these penalties. And he got in to score a nice try. Unfortunately, RG Slayman, I love to see players taking players out beyond the ruck when I'm coaching, but legally, and it was just a killer. At that time of the game, it would have reinforced what I would have seen so far was our dominance on the scoreboard and really letting the Bulls off the hook. Look, I know Snyman, you could see him apologising to his teammates. But yeah, just a killer at that stage of the game. Just to go out beyond the ruck too far and interfere with a possible tackler coming across. So yeah, I don't think the guy would have got across to Penny anyway, because Penny was low down at that stage. So there's like a double whammy. As I said, the next thing that happened then, another silly penalty. Obviously, Frawley just missed time taking out the air, as I mentioned, on his cameo, and it gave a bit of territory. We got back down into the Bulls half again. We came up the near side. It was a lovely blind inside pass by Geordie Barrett. It was a real Super Rugby Hurricanes moment, flicking it back inside. Went to Jimmy O'Brien, back into Penny. And I spoke about hesitancy in our halfbacks. The momentum sort of the Bulls sort of blitzed up on them, and the momentum was killed from, because what happens with a pass like that from Jordy Barrett, it causes a bit of disarray in defence, because it's like a daisy cutter pass that you throw along the ground and just bounces along. It can cause real confusion, but we just lost the momentum completely. Again, because we were going the one direction and we were a little bit easily read on it. Leading up towards just the end of the half, just to finish off, there was a big carry by Marcel Coetzee. And I mentioned at the start of the game, I thought it was a ridiculously harsh penalty on Will Connors to ping. I know Whitehouse was hot on it, but I've watched it back several times and I just cannot see the infringement for the life of me, saying he had hands on the ground. And really the last act of the half was, because I think that, as I said, the Bulls really didn't get much attack going at all, was a penalty against Boyle in the scrum for popping up, which was probably fair. Wilco Lowe got a good shove on him. The unfortunate thing from that as well is that the loose head on this side had his knee on the ground from Salamani, and so he looked at one offence and ignored the other. Even though the Salamani, the loose head for the Bulls, was right in front of him because he was standing on that side. So yeah, that made it 10-6, and they went in for half time. I think discipline probably is the word Leinster would use for the first half. Discipline, silly penalties that gave either the Bulls some easy 3 points, 2 of them obviously, and some easy territory, and obviously discipline around RG Snyman. Just been disciplined on his feet about what he was doing when Penny scored that try. And I thought at times we were a little bit predictable in attack, as I'd outlined before, just about what side we were going and what we were trying to do. On the other side of that, I think the Bulls offered very, very little with the ball in the first half. But we knew the second half would eventually come. We had a callow enough bench in the front row, and the altitude would start to kick in at some stage. So we all felt probably 10-6 at half time wasn't a big enough lead, and it's not that we were wholly dominant in our play, because I've outlined some issues, but it highlighted probably a bit of that and a bit of how substandard the Bulls were on their own attack. That a 4-point lead wasn't enough, and sort of that led us into half time. 10-6.
Yeah, I saw this game in sort of stages. I only got to watch the first 20 minutes live, and then I caught up with the rest later. And I remember being kind of happy enough after the first 20 minutes. Although I felt that I thought we should have gotten more out of that yellow card, that 10-minute spell. I got the sense that we were well prepared for this, in the sense that you can tell that they'd been sort of building the season with this in mind. I think they brought a better personnel than they have done in the past at this stage of the season. They did have a plan. It doesn't mean it was the right plan necessarily, but I think they did have a plan to sort of, they wanted to get an early score and they wanted to strike with a kind of an early move, and they did manage that. But you can't, no matter how much preparation you do, you can't prepare for losing pretty much 2 number 8s in the first 10 minutes. You can't prepare for individual errors, like you said, discipline making. You can't prepare for maybe, calls that the ref is going to make. You've got to do a lot of it in the actual game. But there were good things as well that were happening, like with the Tommy O'Brien before that try was amazing. For the second kick I don't think most people would actually do that. They'd almost sort of, they prepare to let the other player take the ball and be ready to jackal them, rather than think to make that second kick and chase it again. And it was really well set up. And then to find Jordy on that line eventually as well. The Bulls, I noticed the Bulls were kind of picky on those Will Connors. They kind of had a bee in their bonnet about his chop tackles. They were talking to the ref about them. And the South African commentators, they're looking at replays of them, saying there was no attempt to wrap, when there was clearly attempt to wrap. He's got the technique down at this stage. He somehow gets low, but still he's painting a picture for the referees with his tackle. But so then they tried to do it on him, and we saw what happened. But like I said, we didn't get enough out of that, unfortunately. What did you make of it, Rich?
Yeah, pretty much what Tom has spoken about, with the amount of, we were dominant And had it not been for some of those unforced errors, a lack of discipline, lack of composure, we could and should have been further ahead in that first half because, like Tom has just said, that the Bulls were rubbish, pretty much. They did absolutely nothing in that first half to merit any points. Yet they got six. We were only 4 points ahead in that first half. Had the Scott Penny non-try have been a try, then you're talking a different picture because then they're playing catch-up football and with everything that comes with that. But unfortunately, we didn't have a sufficiently large lead at halftime, and we all knew that the second half was coming, and quite apart from the fact that I'm going to be commentating on it, and it was obviously going to be a shitty second half. With the altitude, the callowness of the bench, the ridiculous amount of HIAs we had in that first half. I mean, they all took their toll, and that's what happened in the final quarter. But anyway, that's so yeah. It's unfortunate, but these things happen.
Yeah, I mean it's all true. I mean any team going down to South Africa at any time of the year would probably be happy to have a lead at halftime, but yes. It is true with our history, plus with our overall plans for the season, our determination to get that number one seed, all the different elements to pay back for last season and all that stuff. We would have expected a bigger lead, and the way the half went, things gone a different way. We could have actually, got a bit more points out of it, be leading by more than a score, better to defend. But as it turned out, like you say, the halftime score was Bulls 6, Leinster 10. Well, before we return to the pod, first a little reminder of all the different places you'll find us in the Rugger Sphere, like our YouTube channel, where you'll find a bonus chat about how the South African tour has affected the URC. To get access to our latest content, as well as our presence on all the different social media platforms, you can bookmark us at Linktree/Harpin On Rugby. We do most of our social media on Blue Sky, so do follow us there if you can, and please be sure to comment, like, share, and subscribe as needed. And so with Messrs. Grobbelaar and Vessels on for the Bulls to help with their front row, it was their out half, Keegan Johannes, getting the second half underway, Rich.
Yeah, and as I've just mentioned, we went into the halftime break just 4 points ahead, and I'm sure all of us, and I'm sure the coaching staff were saying, let's try and get the first score, and that is precisely what we did. And it was starting to look good. So a pretty well worked try. I mean, this is about 5 minutes into the second half. We got a line out on the right side on their 22, secure that. We initially come left. One of those now trademark Erges Neyman, as the Saffers pronounce it. Obviously, must be right. Erges Neyman offloads, goes back to Lukey. He fluffs it. Thankfully, it's called backwards. So anyway, it's regathered by, Slimani needs a shout out because he has been absolutely immense this season. And it's not just his scrummaging; it's his footwork. He's gone to the Caelan Doris School of Footwork. His handling has I've never seen him handling as well as he's doing at the moment, but he's certainly enjoying his new lease of life in D4. But anyway, he gets the ball, quite a nice pass back. We reset. We go quick right with a cutout pass from Ross to Tommy O'Brien. So we're pretty much going east to west here. We come left again. 2 quick phases later, Luke passes the ball to Mangan. Back to Ross on the back of a loop. He passes to Geordie Barrett, who goes left to Jimmy O'Brien. A nice double pump by him that commits the would-be defender. He passes it to Osborne. By this time, we've got a 2-on-1, and he goes over right on the corner. This then becomes a nice TMO fest with the king of TMO and dithering decision making with Ben Whitehouse. But in fairness, I've seen these questioned before. Thankfully, the question was the on-field decision was try. and they needed to find some compelling evidence that Osborne had lost control of the ball. It had to be checked. I'm not complaining about that at all. Had I been a Bulls supporter, I would most certainly have wanted that checked. The fact of the matter is that had the question been any other than on-field try, that wasn't given, and that is the reality of it. I don't think he had an opportunity to take the ball in both hands because he was trying to stave off the would-be tacklers. But it's one of those. Had he had the opportunity to have the ball in both hands, we're not even having this conversation. It would have been a try. So anyway, very well worked try. Brilliant conversion from Ross, whom I thought had a pretty decent outing yet again. It seems as if he's trying to remind us all of how good he is before he sets off to Gloucester. So now 6-17 up. It's beginning to look pretty decent. We're not playing badly at all. But then, of course, and Tom has alluded to it already in terms of the callousness of our bench. 48th minute, Slimani, Mangan and McKee go off. Deeney comes on, and Deeney had an absolute mare of a game. Tom Clarkson came on and Smith came on. And that's when our scrum problems seem to coincide in beginning. So a few minutes after that, there's a good kick through by the Bulls, not dealt with by Osborne. We give a pen away for holding on in our 22. They go quickly, actually. They come wide right, but they knock on a couple of centimeters off our line, but it was a forward pass anyway. We clear long. We don't find touch, and Billy LaRue hits a beautiful 50-22. But it really doesn't work out for them. They get a line out 20 meters out. They go long over the 15, but we defuse it. Nice read by Geordie Barrett. It's diffused and we clear. So nothing much came of that, but I think we're already starting to see a change in shift and change in momentum now with the Bulls going on the ascendancy. Moving on, 56, 58 minutes. We give away a scrum pen, one of a series of about 4 or 5 that we gave away in that second half. And they get a line out 25 meters out on the left as they're looking at it. Our right. We give a number of penalties away, penalty advantages away. Deeney collapses them all. So they go for touch 5 meters out. We look to have control with Soroka coming through. I thought he was doing a pretty good job coming through, and I thought he was going to smother it and it was going to end up being a turnover. But unfortunately, Tom Clarkson on the other side of them all trips, and his trip ends up collapsing them all, which is adjudged to be cynical. I don't think it was. I think it was just clumsy and falling over legs.
Yeah, I thought he was trying to pull them all out of touch.
Yeah, that's what he was trying to do.
And that's when it collapsed. So I suppose it's kind of a risk you're taking. Yeah,
it's the dynamics of them all. And given the amount of pens that the amount of pens that the Bulls gave away in the first half, not even a single warning. I'm not complaining about the penalty try and yellow card in this instance, but I just think that should have been replicated in that first half as well, in terms of at the very least a warning. Yeah. So anyway, penalty try, 13-7, and we got TC on the naughty chair. So entering into the fourth quarter, we're back to that 4-point gap, and this was always going to be the dangerous quarter, not least because of the altitude, the callousness of a large number of members of that squad, all the HIAs, the losses of experienced players in that first half, and the fatigue element. So I mean, it doesn't start too badly. We get a pen for a neck roll, and we head into their half, but unfortunately we knock on. 60 odd minutes in, and Ivan Soroka is on for Boyle, and Frawley is on for Jimmy. Play carries on, nothing too major. There's a nothing kick from LaRue. Frawley's in acres of space, nobody near him in our 22, and he manages to knock it on. He replicates what he did against the All Blacks, it seems. So all of a sudden we're all back under pressure again, having pretty much kept them at arm's length for the previous 10 minutes or so. So scrum to the Bulls, the inevitable penalty that we give away. I say inevitable, but to be perfectly honest, and I don't, I know jack poo about scrums in comparison to a lot of people. But for my money, their tight head went down before Soroka. The crown of his head actually hits the ground before Soroka even goes down. But anyway, I repeat, I'm hardly an expert. It was adjudged to be a penalty for against Soroka for going down. But anyway, so they get a 5-meter line out, but thankfully we compete, which was a bit of a risk to take, but it worked out well for us because they knock on, and we managed to clear. So funnily enough, we didn't go for the scrum on our 5 meters out. So another 5 minutes into that, Deeney once again, like I said, he had an awful cameo in this match. Gave away another silly pen right in front of the posts. They go for, about 30 meters out. They go for touch, compounding his own error. He changes his bind in the ensuing maul, gives another penalty away, leading to an official warning against him. And to be perfectly honest, given the space, the area the pitch was in, given the amount of penalties we had already been giving away in the previous 5 minutes, Whitehouse could very easily have given a yellow card there, and you can complain about it as much as you want, but I think we got lucky, or rather Deeney got lucky that he wasn't sent to the sin bin for that. In fairness, so anyway, they go for touch 5 meters out on our left side. They set up the maul. They actually get penalty advantage for us collapsing the maul. But they go over, thankfully, and had they not, I think it was another penalty try, yellow card. So it wasn't converted, so it's a 1-point game, 18-17. Match goes on, and then we get this horror tackle in the air of Andrew Osborne. It was just complete miscalculation by de Klerk. It was awful. It was awful looking at it live. It gets worse when you look at it on the replay. I mean, thankfully, Andrew Osborne is all right. That could have been really, really ugly. I'm really surprised he didn't go off for an HIA, given he'd already been off for an HIA in the first half. He should have gone off. It's one of those issues that I think World Rugby needs to look at. It should be an automatic HIA, even if there are no symptoms. Even though there is no thingy on the mouth guard. But anyway, we get the penalty, obviously, red card to de Klerk. We go for touch 45 meters out on the left side. Few phases of tight play for the next couple of minutes or so on the left side around the Bulls 10-meter line. LaRue strays offside, gets pinged for it, and Ross scores an absolute worldie of a pen from 45 meters out on the 5-meter tram line, and it's over just in off the post. And you're starting to think, we might get away with a win here if we manage the next couple of minutes properly. And in fairness, we managed those 2 minutes pretty well. And then we come to that horror show of a scrum saga with about four resets, which was off a knock on by the Bulls, and you're thinking we in, out, and kick it out, basically, because I think we were about 2 or 3 seconds on the clock. Whitehouse went into pedant Whitehouse mode. And before I carry on, I'm not blaming him. This match was lost well before that for a whole host of other reasons, some of which related to our inefficiencies and ineffectiveness in play, and others in respect to injuries, HIAs, and altitude, etc. So no excuses, but he wanted that scrum to be played out. The penalty we got pinged for and they won the match from, that was an early engage.
Mhm.
I didn't see it at the time. Obviously, when you're watching it live, you don't really see that much. But obviously, speaking to lads on the WhatsApp group after that, and then seeing it today, and I watched it about 3 or 4 times to make certain. And Wilco, what's his face? Or he went early. That was an early engage on that final reset. That should have been a free kick to us or a penalty, whatever it is. We should have won that match on that basis. Unfortunately, we didn't. They got a pen and put it over, and the rest is history. But anyway, that was it. Full time, 21-20 to the Bulls.
Yeah, very messy at the end. I mean, like you say, the Bulls weren't exactly on their top game in the first half. But I suppose, when it comes to scrums and mauls and, 5 meter game, it's kind of muscle memory to them at this stage. And if they get any kind of a nudge in those scrums, they're going to, even with that try. I mean, I was worried going into the second half, could we stretch the lead at all? And I actually felt, when we did get that Osborne try, when it was eventually given, that was some kind of evidence, but it still seemed a long way to go. It was only 47 minutes. That half took ages to get by. It's just kind of the clock really seemed to slow down, and you knew that they could knock off 2 tries pretty quickly, and that's exactly what they did. The referee, I mean, the best Ben Whitehouse moment for me was when he eventually got the decision to award the try to Osborne. He goes up to the captains and he goes, now this is what the TMO has come back with. It's like when you bring something back to a shop and they go off and it says, now my manager has told me that's what's wrong with it. In other words, please don't blame me. I don't know, was he more afraid of Coetzee or the actual reaction of the crowd? But no, it was, but like you say, the call for that last scrum taken individually was, absolutely right. I do think it was an early engage, but the whole thing about that scrum was the fourth reset.
Yeah.
He says at one point, he says, lads, we will reset all day when it's 50-50s, which kind of gives them wiggle room to see everything is 50-50 until it wasn't, it
wasn't.
It was, it's that we've always said about the scrums, whether it's at the first scrum of the game or a decisive one right at the end, just make the decision on the first go one way or another, and this endless resets. I mean, teams are trying to buy penalties. He actually says to the Bulls, I'm not going to let you try to buy a penalty.
That's right.
But anyway, listen, it's but I think, you hit the nail on the head there. It wasn't that they pipped us by a point at the end, which, we all know South African teams are wont to do. It's that we should have been ahead by more at an earlier stage, and we shouldn't have been in that position. So there's a lot of situations. We rely a lot on our NIQs, and I was delighted that our NIQs went down. I think if you said ahead of time, which of the NIQs do you think might stand out? I don't think many would have gone for Slimani, even though he's had a great season. You thought maybe, Jordy Barrett, he did get his try, but of course he had a kick out on the full. I think he was lucky with a tackle at one stage as well. RG's offloads didn't always come off. I mean, it's one thing if the other team don't know you're going to do them, but when your teammates don't know as well, that can be kind of problematic. So there was a couple of knock-ons, but there was plenty of errors to go around, like you say, Deeney silly penalties, the Frawley knock-on. There was all these decisive moments where we could have had advantage. We just wanted some time in the Bulls' half in that final quarter, and it wasn't happening. What did you make of it, Tom?
Yeah, firstly on the Slimani thing, it's great that he's re-signed. That's worth mentioning. That's a great signing for next season. So delighted he's going to stay on and affect the begrudgers. Just that, yeah. Look, I suppose it's everyone wants to focus on the last minute or two of the game, and I suppose that I'll do the same just to play along. Look, both he's are right. That last Bull scrum was 100 meters in the Olympics. You would have 8 DQs for early start because, but in fairness,
maybe they should use a gun for the set at this stage. That's actually not a bad idea.
Maybe, but yeah, look, I can be a bit bitter with that. And that's okay. And if any Bulls fans are listening, look, that's when we lose a game, we can give out a bit. But the killer for me was just before that. Leading up to that scrum, we had 2 or 3 carries out on the far side of where that scrum was, and they were very passive carries. We were just trying to kill the clock, and we were going to ground.
One of them just stood there. He literally just stood and let the tackle come into it. That's asking for it.
that's a complete passive carries, I'd call it, and you're
Yeah.
coaching, you're getting rid of passive carries out of the game because the Latchards are doing nothing as well, and all it's allowing is you're engaging none of the Bulls' defense because they're able to just drift onto the next one, and that's what eventually happened. Just ridiculous. I don't know what they were better off. They would have been better off just shooting it back to Jordy Barrett and kicking it back down into their 22 and say to them with 5-10 seconds to go, well, make your full length or come up the other end of the pitch because the Bulls attack. I don't know, hindsight's a great thing, but those passive carries and ineffective latchers alongside it just was painful to look at. I was getting 2008 Heineken Cup vibes for the last 20 minutes of that game. Looking at it, it was just, I don't know what Leinster were doing. And when you do that, you're always running the risk of losing the ball or even giving away a penalty. And we ended up with that series of scrums. And look, in some ways, yeah, it was just a bit of a killer to lose the winning streak. But looking back on the full game, we've all highlighted certain areas where we weren't exactly right. And I do agree with you, Jeff. I think we came down with a far better game plan than we did the last time. Sort of nullified the Bulls' kicking game and did a lot right, but just some execution on other areas just was off. And yeah, as you say, when you run the risk against a good decent enough South African team who aren't playing that well, to be fair, you leave it down to the last 84th minute, that can happen. And the Bulls got their win and celebrated on the field properly.
Yeah, you could see how much it meant to them. You can see how much it meant to the fans. There were a lot of cuts to the fans. They were invested from start until finish. So I suppose from a broader aspect, it's a good.
100%. If you win a close game, if you win a close game, you're always going to be ecstatic, and rightly so.
But I think they like beating us as well. I mean, they've moved to this league after 4 years, and they're not just happy playing each other now. They've got their targets set on their teams up in the north, and there's certain ones that they want to go after in particular, and we're definitely in their sights. So it's good. We just hopefully maybe if we do play them later in the season, we'll have a better team and we'll have learned some more lessons and get the results. But listen, that's how it turned out. The final score was Bulls 21, Leinster 20. Elsewhere in the URC, Leinster's first defeat of the campaign gave the rest of the chasing pack a chance to catch up, and much like the Bulls, both Glasgow and the Sharks needed scores at the death to overcome Munster and Zebra respectively. Ulster also left it late in defeating the Dragons in Newport, while Connacht fell just short in a high-scoring affair against the Ospreys, although the 2 bonus points earned might come in handy. There were also wins for Benetton, Stormers and Cardiff, and it all now means Leinster's lead has been cut to just 9 points at the top, with also 5 points separating Cardiff in 5th and Lions in 13th, with all 3 of the other Irish provinces right in the mix for the top 8. Meanwhile, in the Women's Six Nations, France overcame Ireland 27-15 in the opening match of the 2025 Six Nations, despite a long spell with 14 players. The match ended up 3 tries apiece, with 2 from Aoife Wafer and 1 from Niv Jones. But in the end, it was a superior place kicking of Morgane Bourgeois that proved decisive, although Ireland showed resilience after a shaky start, especially with Wafer's second try bringing them to within 2 points at 15-17. Ireland now move on to Parma next Sunday to play Italy. Going back to our feature match from Saturday, afterwards, Leo Cullen had this to say after the match, quote, "We were coming back off a break and teams lack a bit of a cohesion coming into this part of the season. It's not a nice way to lose a game at the end, but we put in a lot of effort up until that point," end quote. And from the fans' point of view, at the full-time whistle, Del McGee said this on Blue Sky, quote, "If you throw an AIL prop into the mix for half an hour, you're on a hiding to nothing. Still, some good individual showings in a difficult arena," end quote. And all this brings us to our final thoughts, starting with Tom.
Yeah, well, look, I have 2 separate thoughts, maybe contradicting of each other. I said to myself at the start of the season, because we always keep thinking about May when it comes to, or May and June as it is when it comes to Leinster, and so I've said this year more focusing on a week by week and enjoying each game as it comes, and we've been lucky to enjoy whatever it's been, 16 out of 16 games, 16 wins in both competitions. So yeah, it was gutting to lose this game, especially when I thought we probably did more than the Bulls to win it. Maybe not quite enough as it seems. Quite happy with some of the game plan that we had, and maybe some of the game plan execution wasn't there. That said, leaving the week by week aside, looking at the table now, Leinster really just need to beat Zebra, Ulster, and Glasgow at home. Maybe get a bonus point in one of those games, and they won't be caught. So in some ways, the Sharks and the Scarlets games are free hits, especially beating Glasgow if we can in that last home game. So like we're on 58 points. Even a bonus point against Zebra, which is no foregone conclusion the way they're playing, and a couple of wins against Ulster and Glasgow won't see us caught. So really all the hard work that's been put up to this so far to this season has put us in a position where if we can just win our home games now, we've secured that top spot, and that's where we want to be again, to give us the best chance possible, and hopefully maybe to get one back over the Bulls or maybe the Sharks, in a potential semi-final in Dublin. But as I said, I'm going to enjoy the games in between now and then. The Sharks game next week and the Quins game in Croke Park after that. So like first defeat in 280 days, can't really complain too much as a supporter, if your team does that. But it was not nearly there, but just not quite there. And the Bulls probably just about deserve to sneak it, even though they were fairly malfunctioning themselves.
Yeah, I mean, like I think we did a pretty good job, doing the wrap, talking about Leinster's inefficiencies, but there was things that we couldn't control. The two early the two particular HIAs, which basically took our 6-2 bench out of the equation. It's the reason we had it was to have fit forwards coming on in the second half, and that was gone. And those two that came off the bench, the two back rowers were getting just as much of that oxygen situation in the final stages as anyone else was. But that can happen. There were some ref decisions, but there was a bit of both. But when it comes to talking about this is our first loss of the season, I don't think we get a lot of sympathy from the rest of the league, given the way the league is shaped up. But that said, 12 wins is great, but the way this league is shaping up this season, up to this point, we had yet to have played the other three in the top four. We hadn't played them yet, so that was a factor. So we hopefully we got the Sharks next week, and you say Glasgow last game of the season, we can get enough from those final games, because it's really important for Leinster and what they want to do this season to get definitely that number one seed, to try to get that home final, in the Aviva if we get that far. So that's kind of what we're hoping for. What are your thoughts, Rich?
Yeah, and in all fairness, given our history with the sides that we've been sending down to South Africa because of the time of the year that it happens, had he offered me a losing bonus point against the Bulls, I'd have bitten your hand off, in fairness. But as it happens, and as the match panned out, a bit gutted that we didn't win that, because that was there for the winning. It really was. It's probably, despite everything else that happened, despite our own inefficiencies, etc., it's probably one of the better performances that we've had down in South Africa over the years. We've already touched upon all those HIAs, etc., but at the end of the day, it was fine margins, to be perfectly honest. That match, some people didn't really turn up. Some people didn't do themselves any favors. Frawley and Deeney in particular, we've spoken about. I thought the poor Soroka, the loose head, was being overpowered. That was a bit of a meat grinder for the poor lad. But it's the learnings that they take from this. He'll only get better. He'll only get bigger and better at what he does. So my closing thoughts. Obviously disappointed that we lost, but as you say, 280 days it's taken. I'll take that. It's about the business end of the season, and I'll happily lose now so long as we win the crucial matches later on.
Yeah, I mean, it was weird. I don't think I've ever had such a disparity between first watch and second watch. When I watched it live, you forget where you are on the table. You forget when you're actually especially a tight match like that. You forget how many you've won. You forget about every aspect thing. You want to see that. You want to see your team win, and it was really deflating the way that happens right at the end. Second watch, I saw a lot more positives. I actually felt a lot better. I think it was more prepared. I mean, you look at the result we had the last time we went down there in the URC, and you compare those. It's a big difference. I mean, obviously they're both losses, but you can definitely see the positive. I think we said before this tour, if we could get 2 points on the tour, that would be a serious plus. So we're kind of halfway there if you want to look at it that way. But still, disappointing at the time when you see the result go in. But listen, it is what it is, and hopefully we can learn enough and bring it forward. Well, that's brilliant. Many thanks again to Tom and Rich for joining me. Hope to have you back on again soon. Thanks, lads.
Thanks, Jeff.
Thanks.
Nice to see you too.
Thanks, Rich. Thanks, Jeff. You too, mate.
As for our next batch of Harpin, we'll have our 80 plus column posting on Wednesday before turning our attention to Leinster's next South African assignment in Durban. So please be sure to follow us on any or all of our social media platforms, which you'll find at linktree/Harpin On Rugby. In the meantime, stay safe, everyone. Slán.